Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Leadership Speaker Series for Term 2. My name is Anthony Mitri, and I've got the pleasure of being your host for this afternoon. Before we kick off with today's proceedings, I just need to welcome some people who are joining us virtually. On the line, we've got the Blue Mountains at the Youre campus. I'm sure they can see us there. If you want to give us a wave. There we go. We've also got Blue Mountains at Inti at the Malaysia campus. We've got Blue Mountains Stanford at our Thailand campus. And then finally, welcome to Blue Mountains at our China campus. I hear it's very warm and humid over there today, so you're lucky. It's freezing here in Sydney. We've also got, we're streaming this live through YouTube, so I'm going to encourage those of you who are watching me on the other side of this screen to put your questions for today's session straight into the questions section, and they'll come through to us via our amazing marketing people who are going to send those through. So lots of questions. I want to see a lot of that online. I'll get right into introductions. We've got the pleasure of having Craig Hooley, who's the GM at the Shangri-La here in Sydney. International hospitality career that spans over 20 years. Craig's developed and opened 22 award-winning hotels across multiple countries with iconic brands. Prior to his current role as the GM of Shangri-La in Sydney, Craig led corporate operations at Shangri-La International Management in Hong Kong, where he was responsible for the implementation of commercially driven programs across the group. As the Regional Director of Operations at IHG in the UK, Craig spearheaded the success of 44 managed hotels under multiple brands, becoming the centre of innovation for IHG. After a career which commenced with the Royal Australian Navy, Craig's expertise include multi-unit operations, corporate human resources, strategy and development in Australasia, South Pacific, Europe, and Asia. So basically, you've done everything. Welcome
Like it, doesn't it?
Welcome today, Craig Hooley.
Thank you very much.
So what I want to do today is just kind of go on a little bit of a journey. I want to see where you started, where you're at now, and those of you in the audience, please make sure you're going to be asking some questions. Let's start off with where this passion, where did your passion for hospitality come from?
I don't think I knew it was a passion for hospitality when I first started out. When I was younger, I was very keen to get involved with anything. I used to get involved with charities, anything to do with work. I was a paper boy from when I was 10 years old, all the way through my school years, and I really enjoyed the service orientation. I really saw the value in how people benefited from offering great service. I also realised there was some correlation between the better the service, the better the tip. So as a young person, that also was quite beneficial as well. But I really understood from an early time that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help others.
Wow. So I guess, what was your first job in hospitality?
Well, my first job in hospitality, funnily enough, some would say strange, is the Navy. So I finished school and I joined the Royal Australian Navy. And some would say, well, why is that hospitality? And for those of you who've done history would know that hospitality started in the Navy sort of many hundreds of years ago. And so I was involved from day one. So my first day in the Navy was in scullery. I spent 10 hours straight washing up. So it wasn't the best part of introduction to hospitality, but certainly there's obviously a military side to the Navy, but there's also a lot of it's about people, a lot of it's about accommodation, housekeeping, normal operations you get. And as you go and study to be a naval officer, you learn about etiquette. So you learn about dining, entertaining, how to prepare foods, types of foods, how to entertain across cultures, different parts of the world. And so in my role as a naval officer, I got to entertain dignitaries all over the world at cocktail parties and events and so forth during my career of 13 years. So for me, it was hospitality through and through. It was where I learned most of my foundation about how to run a hospitality business.
And I guess how did your family take it when you were like, I want to go into the Navy. This is my career path. Were they supportive? They a little bit apprehensive?
My mum said I was going to die. That's what she told me. I was like, oh my gosh. She said, what are you doing that for? But I didn't even think, actually. I didn't realise that you actually went to sea in the Navy. I missed that whole bit in the recruitment process. I was completely focused on something very different. For me, it was a very different opportunity. And so for me, I was so excited just to get in there and take part. And, you know, and from the day one, I was always involved in organising events and, you know, improving our food and beverage experiences. Back then, food and beverage wasn't great, I'll tell you, in the Navy. But sort of putting some quality around it, garnishing and things like that, things that we didn't do.
What was it like? What were you dishing up?
Well, it was literally an old traditional line like you probably see on a campus, you know, where you had, you know, breakfast was egg, bacon, and that's it. What would you like? Egg, good. That's what you get. And it wasn't. You know, I think the Navy was very serious about nutrition. Yep. They made sure, I mean, doctors used to sign off on the nutritional value of it, but there probably wasn't a lot of thought put behind, how would you say, the presentation and the taste of it. And so, you know, from the early days, we talked about, I talked about with my bosses, and they go, why? About, you know, how engaging the team is all about actually making them happy, and the best way is through people's stomach, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You make me happy with a good meal any day. So you've got the Navy, and I guess one of the biggest challenges is working in our industry is, you know, your friends going into the industry and your friends while you're actually in industry. Work-life balance, well, I guess work-life, but that balance between your kind of pre and during life.
Yeah, I think work-life balance is something that everyone has to manage. And in fact, I've just appointed a new resident manager only a month ago. And she's saying, when do I come to work, when do I not? You know, and she's worked the last 28 days straight. I said, well, you can take a day off if you want. Because it is hard sometimes. You can get, if for no reason than passion, you can get really stuck into the business and actually, next thing you know, it swallows you up. I think over time, what you've got to learn is how to balance how you contribute versus how you actually look after your personal life, your health and well-being, eating right and being right, because it's not, you've got to be 100% to be able to continue the passion through a career in hospitality, which is just like every other career. It's long and it's hard. So for me, it's about being around, right place, right time is my favourite saying. You know, so I think that's absolutely the key to our industry.
So we then finish off in your time in the Navy.
Yeah.
What then? What next?
Well, what happened was I was involved with the Defence decided to outsource, and probably a lot of you would know that, outsource housekeeping and food and beverage operations. Mm-hmm. And I formed part of that process of doing that. And when I finished that, I got involved with hospitality directly with hotels when we did that project. So when I finished, I thought that's my next step. I want to get into hotels. And that's when I first started thinking the hotels was where I wanted to be. So I left the Navy and I applied for jobs in hotels. In fact, I applied for 120 jobs in hotels.
Wow.
In the first year. And how many interviews do you think I got?
10? None. Why?
I think because people didn't understand my experience.
Okay.
So I had a Navy resume, and I said, yeah, I've looked after laundries, I've looked after rooms, I've looked after big kitchens, but they just couldn't see the relevance there, I guess. And I applied for F&B attendant roles, I applied for coordinator roles, I applied for anything.
Wow.
I didn't get one interview, and so I was a bit despondent.
Yeah.
After that first
And how did you deal with it? How did you cope? Was there any point where you kind of went, maybe this isn't for me?
No, I did many times, and many times I thought about going back in, picking up other experience I had in the Navy, driving ships, other bits and pieces, and going and taking a different career. But I really wanted to get into hospitality, so I kept plodding away, and then I thought there must be some other way to do it. Anyway, one morning I was reading the Sydney Morning Herald, and it said, "Do you have management experience but no real industry experience?" And I went, "That's me. That's written exactly for me." So I rang the guy up straight away on the phone, and in fact, funnily enough, he was an ex-naval officer.
Oh, wow.
Who got out 20 years before, and he sort of knew my exact situation, and he hired me on the spot. He said, "I know what you're like. I know exactly what you're going to be like. You got the job." And he hired me on the spot, but it wasn't easy. Basically, what it was selling management consultancy services. So he said, "I'll give you the framework, but you've got to go and earn the money." So I actually didn't. It wasn't actually an income. It was just an opportunity. So I thought, what do I do with this? So I thought, what I'll do is I'll start approaching all hotels, and I'll start trying to get work with hotels. So anyway, I worked with Stanford, Accor, ISG. I worked with all the, but nothing really came about until one night I got a phone call from the group human resource manager for Mirvac Hotels at the time, saying, we saw your proposal for some services, but we can't afford you. I thought, well, that's terrible. But would you like a job? That's how I got in. So
what was the first job?
So the first job was a HR manager. I'd never done HR before, because they don't have HR in the services. So they said, can you be a HR manager? I said, well, what does that do? And they said, well, you just look after the people. I said, done, easy. So I got up and I did all the stuff that the Navy taught me. You know, I wrote policies, operating procedures, job descriptions, all that sort of stuff. And I only in 9 months they promoted me from there to area manager in New South Wales, and then 12 months later I became head of HR for the group in less than 18 months. So it was a whirlwind catch up. It was.
So you're basically managing a big group of people that you've kind of not really done their job in a hotel context, but you've done it in a completely different context. Yeah. And you were able to just kind of apply the same principles.
Yeah, because I think the premise that I guess I learnt in the services was really about systematic process. Yeah. One, to look after yourself, to be motivated, to know what you want to do and know where you want to go. Second of all, have a systematic way of doing that. And I think a lot of people don't get that opportunity that I got. A lot of training and a lot of investment in me. And so when I first joined the industry, I guess they were saying, "Wow, a procedure. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's great. Can we do more of those? Yeah, of course. I'll pump them out. Get me a computer. I'll give you some more." And of course, the company liked it, you know. And actually, it formed basis of actually my growth. But we only had 8 hotels, so it was only a small business. It wasn't a big business when I joined, but the learning curve for all of us as a group was actually growing. So I wasn't growing by myself. The whole leadership team in Mirvac was growing. So we started off with 8 and we grew up to 50 hotels over 6 years. So it was sort of a very big growth phase for the company, and it was a big learning experience. So, and that's when I got involved more in operations, development, and so forth. And we opened, obviously, and acquired all those hotels over that 6-year period. So it was a very, very concentrated experience of my career, and probably set me up for the rest of my career.
So what next? What happens after Mirvac?
So as Mirvac, I left and I tried to take some time off. Because my work-life balance had gone really to the curb. So I took some time off and tried. So after about 6 weeks, I got a call from ISG from Singapore asking me to join ISG. So I said no 3 times, and then it was the opposite way around to 10 years previously. And then finally I said yes, and I joined as their regional director of human resources for Asia. And then I spent about just over a year doing that, and then they promoted me into an area manager in the United Kingdom, looking after the manager estate over there. So that was a great opportunity for me, and that was a big change management process for me to get my head around. And then looking after, obviously, completely 44 hotels. So moving out of function into operations was obviously a big change as well.
So I guess you had the Australian experience, you had the Asian experience, and then you had the UK experience. Yeah. What was the key differences?
I think being in one environment like Australia, you learn a certain way of doing things. I think once you move into a second environment, so when I was looking after Asia, obviously there was Japan, China, and Southeast Asia, which are all very different environments. You learn a third dimension. So it's not just about learning, it's just about number of countries, but even just going to a second country, you learn there's a second dimension to how things are done. And all of a sudden, everything has a three-dimensional view. And I think that was the biggest learning for me, was that there was many different ways of doing things. And so that opened my eyes up and really changed my leadership style, changed the way I manage people, and changed the way I manage the business. I started to listen a lot more, work a lot slower, and take time, listen to the team, listen to the market, a lot more reading to really understand what was happening, because I realised that probably when I was in Australia, I was probably missing 3/4 of what was going on. So that was one thing. I think the other thing for the UK for me was culturally. I think culturally I thought going over there would be very similar to Australia, but it wasn't.
What was it like?
The Brits are a lot more traditional than Australian, I think. I think in the way they do business. Still very hierarchical. I think in traditional terms, and they still like the boss to set the direction, to set where you want to go. I found, so when I first arrived, I thought, just go for it, get on with it. And all of a sudden they turn around and say, well, what do you want us to do? Well, run your business, you know. So it took me a while, and I got a lot of learning from that about sort of, I wasn't listening enough to what they were wanting. So from a leadership point of view, it's not what you want to do, it's sort of what your team need. It's the support they need and the framework they need is what is important. So learning that was a big part of my growth over there.
I guess what was the difference, or difference or challenges when you came out of that function and going into operations? What was?
Obviously I was in operations in the Navy, so I had done operational work for about I was 13 years I think before I left and moved into that HR component of my career, and I think going back into that, it was probably more comfortable for me. I sort of always felt sometimes HR, I got in trouble sometimes for jumping over the fence into someone else's environment, particularly finance. But I think, getting operations, I think once again, understanding your audience is really, really important, and understanding obviously you've got all the functions reporting to you, and that's a big change. And that's, I guess, someone going, first role, RM and GM roles is very much like that. You go from sort of a functional role into a sort of a general role. And there's always a bias to stick to your comfort zone. And of course, as a general manager, you really can't do that, because if you do, you end up missing out the other parts of the business. So it was a step, but it wasn't a big step for me.
So I'm going to jump back a little bit. You went from Mirvac to time off to IHG.
Yep.
How did IHG find out about you, or did you approach them?
No. I was when they rang me, I think I was playing golf. No, I think you build up. The industry is very small, and I think you do build networks of relationships, and sometimes you get a bit despondent because you say, well, why doesn't that person ring me up and give me a job? But probably because the job didn't suit you, and it wasn't right for you. But when that right job does come along, generally people will be quite comfortable to refer you. And certainly what happened was that there was a specific issue around change management that needed to be addressed. They'd been on literally a global hunt for over a year, and they hadn't found the person. And it was literally through a meeting, through a leadership meeting of Asia Pacific, that two people connected, and somehow I got my phone number. So that was basically how it worked.
This is all the days before LinkedIn, isn't it?
It was.
People chatting to each other.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And it still happens today. Yeah. It's very much about networks, and while it's a big industry in some ways, in other ways it's very, very small. And if you look at even the top 3 or 4 chains still make up less than 15% of the global room stock. So we're really quite a tight business if you really think about it, even in the top 4 chains. So it's surprising how many people you run into. Too many.
Yeah. So you've now wrapped up with IHG.
Yep.
What's next?
So obviously I finished in the UK. I wanted to get back closer to Asia. I've been over there for 6 years, and I wanted to get closer to home, and also I wanted to work again in Asia. So IHG sort of didn't have anything ready for me, and so once again I had a phone call from someone new in Shangri-La, and then they hired me in a corporate position straight away, which is great.
Absolutely.
And then I started doing some projects for them in Hong Kong. So that was great. So I spent just over a year in Hong Kong, and then one morning I got a phone call from a CEO, and he said, "Would you go to Istanbul?" And I said, "Sure, no worries." So I started packing back for Istanbul, and then an hour later he brings me back and goes, "Would you go to Sydney?" I said, "Sure. Which one?" And he said, "No, Sydney's all right. Sydney's all right." So I packed my bags and came to Sydney. So here I am back in Sydney. So it was very much it was a fortunate opportunity for me, and being back, and it's always hard to get a hotel in your home city, isn't it? And particularly Sydney. So I was really, really lucky to have the opportunity, and it took me a couple of months to settle back down. It's a very small market, obviously, compared to the other markets I've worked in, but once you get used to it again, it's fun. Yeah, it's fun.
So how long were you abroad from the time that you left Sydney and then back?
Just over, probably wasn't it 7 years, I suppose, in total.
What was the biggest challenge while you were away?
biggest challenge. I guess the biggest challenge was initially, moving around is just building a life up, a network, and that sort of place. Particularly when you hadn't lived there before.
Yep.
There's always that adjustment phase, but then you always get past that, and you always sort of get comfortable eventually. But it does take time, and you just got to work through that. You know it's going to come, but you just got to work through it.
So you're now back in Sydney.
Yep.
Great. They've basically given you the keys to the Cadillac, I guess. You're now the GM of probably Sydney's one of Sydney's nicest hotels.
Yeah, I think so.
What was day one like? Because you've got students in this room who aspire to be GMs one day. What was day one like? Talk me through day one.
Day one was, for me at Sydney, was a very refreshing experience actually, because first of all, two of the ex-com actually worked for me previously in Sydney, so they jumped up. G'day Craig, welcome back, which was nice to be back. But I think coming back as a general manager into Sydney or India Hotel, the first couple of days is really quite hectic, because a lot passes over your mind. You meet a lot of people, everyone shakes your hand, hi. We've got over 600 staff on the books. So everyone shakes your hand, and then of course there's the business side, get your head around, and the market and all that sort of thing. So like any of these roles, it hits you pretty hard the first couple of days, and it's just about just listening and taking your time and understanding it. But it was a great experience. Seeing the hotel was great, and then obviously, as a typical general manager, you're looking for opportunity. So that's the first thing you look for as a businessman. Where's the opportunity? So, and that, as I started to go into the first couple of weeks, I started to realise the opportunity and where we could go, and that's where my motivation comes from.
So how hard is it finding that balance between this is stuff that I want to do, but here's all the cool opportunities that are available, but this is the core business that we've really got to focus on. How do you find that balance?
One of the hardest things as general manager is really being able to balance your time and balance your priorities, because you've got obviously day-to-day running issues, you've got people issues, you've got then the commercial side, where do you get business from? Then you've got obviously the building side, so whether it's owners or investors, you've got to sort of convince them about where you want to go, where the money needs to be spent. And I guess the secret ingredient to being a really good general manager is actually knowing how to balance all that up. And that unfortunately, that's where time is really the only, dare I say it, people, is the only, I never would have said that, but it's probably the only remedy for that. You just need to get experience. Yep. You need to understand how every part of the business works. You need to understand intricately how engineering works. Otherwise, the engineer will come to you and say, boss, can you sign this capital? And it's probably something you don't even need. Yep. But it's got such a long name, you don't question it. So you've got to really understand every part of the business. You've got to understand how a building lifestyle works. You've got to understand how wholesalers work, OTAs work, how industrial relations work. You've really got, not be an expert at it, but you've got to understand it enough to be able to pull it together into a succinct plan. And I think that's the biggest challenge these days, is that for general managers, that mandate is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Particularly for a big hotel, where you're still largely a business unit.
So tell me about the hotel industry prior to you leaving Australia and then coming back. What's been the biggest change?
Yeah, the single biggest change in Australia, which is the same globally. One is competition. Certainly, a greater range of brands and a greater range of product. So there's certainly something for everybody these days in regards to brand. And secondly is the speed of the market and the speed of feedback, and that's mainly driven through the online environment. So OTAs, TripAdvisor, feedback, booking lines and so forth. That sort of has sped the industry up significantly, whereas before guest feedback sort of largely didn't come to you for a very long period of time, sometimes months after you did it. I mean, the old only 15 years ago, you fill a guest form and it'd go to a central company, they would process it, put it into a report and send it back to you. It'd be six weeks later before you got the feedback. These days, I have an app on my phone that correlates all my social media feedback, and it beeps every time I get it, which is about every second minute of the day.
Wow.
And it tells me exactly what someone's saying straight away, and we try to respond, literally in minutes, and that's the sort of the speed of we operate now. Booking now, the way you can book through TripAdvisor, Booking.com, obviously, other OTAs, wholesalers. The networks now of how you can book, and then how do you manage your pricing? How do you control your pricing? How do you control your relationships? All those sort of things now, I think, are becoming a lot more complex and also happening a lot faster. So as a result of that, the reaction time needs to be faster.
So some will argue that the modern GM today is becoming less and less of a hotelier and becoming more and more of an executive and more of a business person. What's your take?
No, I'm first and foremost a host. So I still try and meet most of my VIP guests every day.
Yep.
I walk the business at least 4 times a day. I'll be in the outlets in the evening time for the meal periods to talk to guests. I think absolutely. I think you've got to remember why you're in the business for.
Yeah.
So absolutely. If you lose that passion for this business, then there's no longer be in it, because that's what drives you and that's what drives the business. And you've got to understand what guests want and what guests are looking for and how they feel. And so once you understand that, you can understand how you're going to deliver that experience. And I think particularly in a luxury experience going forward, I think it's the biggest growth market. I think in the next 10 years, luxury is really going to find its own little space in the market, and it's going to be quite different to the rest of the industry. There's the high net worth individual is growing literally by the day. I think how many millionaires are there in China now? I don't know. I think
too many.
Thousands now, isn't there? I think hundreds of thousands. And I think that there's a lot more discretionary spend now than there was 10, 15 years ago. And I get people who come into my hotel and they will spend a lot of money. They're quite happy to do it, but they're very, very conscious of value, and they want value. So
a lot of our students kind of look at those luxury brands and think, yes, I want to work for those luxury brands. But how challenging is it working in a luxury brand versus, for example, working in a lifestyle brand? What are the biggest challenges there?
I think the challenge I hear, and I'll probably see my teams feel it more than I feel it, is the luxury end is a lot more hectic in regards to what you need to do and how fast you need to do it. Guest requests come through quite quickly, and a guest will check into a room and they say, well, I don't want that door there, I want that door moved, I want that over there. If you're staying in a mid-scale product, you'd say, well, tough, just deal with it. You don't like the door, go somewhere else.
Yep.
In a luxury brand, you fix it. You move the door. We had a situation a couple of weeks ago where we had in our presidential suite, a gentleman checked in, but he didn't want to see any tiles on the floor. He wanted it completely carpeted. So we're trying to run around trying to find someone who could come and carpet the bathroom in with a couple of hours' notice. But these are the sort of things that you do in a luxury environment. They'll ring up and say, I want a baked dinner, or now, and so the chef's going, well, come on, how do I cook a baked dinner in half an hour? So you sort of get a lot more. It's a lot more demanding, and it's not as consistent. You don't know where the next request is going to come from, it's whether it's a VIP delegation, and we get a lot of those dignitary people. For instance, we had a dignitary in a month or so ago that wanted a specifically designed mattress, so we had to go. We worked with Sleeve Maker closely. We went and actually handmade the mattress for the guest, for the hotel room. So that's what luxury is about, and it's about personalisation, it's about customisation, and it's about efficiency. They want it their way, and they want it today.
Have you ever had to say no?
I think the secret in our industry is you don't say no. You let them make the decision.
Yep.
You give them the options, and they'll decide whether it's a yes or no. I think that's the secret.
What's been the trickiest request that you've had? I guess tiles is pretty tough, but
I think the trickiest requests are the ones I guess you least expect.
Yep.
Like I don't want to see tiles in my bathroom. You think, well, everyone has tiles in their bathroom. I mean, seriously, what's wrong with tiles? They're great. But this person apparently, from some of their minders, was conscious of falling over. And so just wanted something that was a better grip. But many different things. One was an Asian hotel where we had a toilet and then a bidet next to it, and they wanted that removed. They wanted it removed straight away. And so it's like I was going to engineering. Can you remove that? Well, I guess we can. So with a hammer, chip it away and you remove it. It's probably one of the more weirdest requests. You know, it can be, but I think that's some people like that part of the industry, and it's a different level. It is a different level and a different experience, and of course you don't see it a lot, particularly in this part of the world. Probably not as much, but certainly in Asia, in the UK. You get it, you know. You see guests come into the UK with their own 747s, and they unload all their own cars, all their own equipment, all their own everything, and they bring it all to the hotel, you know. And they look after this. Okay. So I think that's really about what being a hotelier is about. You know, if you go back to many hundreds of years ago, being a hotelier was to give you that support and comfort when you travelled somewhere new. And if you remember why luxury hotels originally started, it was you know like Pan Am in America developed the Intercontinental brand. Why did they develop it? Because they were flying people to these destinations, but they didn't know what to do when they got there. So they built hotels in the destination so that they could actually, you know, give them the support and give them the comforts they need of home when they were abroad. You know, and so. The Michelin star, where the Michelin star came from? Well, it came from Michelin tyres, because they built all these tyres for cars, but of course they had nowhere to drive to. so they developed a star rating for restaurants to give them a level of comfort to know what to expect when they went to these places, and that's where Michelin star rating come from originally. So hospitality is about giving people comfort during travel and journeys, and I think that's the basis of our industry.
So let's talk about that comfort piece. I guess there's a big shift now in the industry where they're trying to make the room experience and the hotel experience as closely aligned to the home experience, particularly with introduction of technology. What are you guys doing at Shangri-La to make people feel at home?
Yeah, I think if you remember going back, I think hotels always try to be one step ahead. So if you remember, there used to be the signs on the motels, we have waterbeds, or we have colour TV. Have you ever seen those signs, you know? And we've always tried to be one step in front. I think nowadays it's impossible to be one step in front, because we don't, you know, literally most consumers already have what's next. Right. So for hotels now, for us, particularly at Shangri-La, it's really about making sure that we are in line with that, you know, and we keep up to speed. So we make sure that our TVs are the size that our guests would expect to watch when they're at home. We make sure that our internet is completely seamless. So it's completely free and completely seamless. You don't even have to press a button or anything. You walk into the hotel, it automatically picks up your device and hooks you on. You know, that sort of thing is what people expect at home. When they walk in home, they expect that all the wireless is already there. They don't expect to put a number in and this and that and the other. So for us, it's about trying to recreate that environment of home. So that requires a lot of thought on how we do that, but that's how we do it from a technology point of view. So for instance, we haven't gone down some roads, you know, some more advanced areas like, for instance, you know, telephone check-ins and door opening and things like that yet, because we don't believe our guests at the moment are expecting that. They're expecting more of the TV, timely service, customised service, seamless internet. And up-to-date news. So online, we do online news portals and things like that, which is what our guests like as well. So I think, to your point, it's about keeping in pace and making sure that we provide a service that they would normally expect when they're at home. Is probably a really good summary.
Does the luxury environment allow for innovation and disruption, or is it very this is our box and this is where we're going to stay?
I think like a lot of things in life. Simple and easy are very close words, but they're very different words. How do you bring a seamless experience, and how do you bring the latest technology into a room, whether it's a TV set, whether it's music, or whether it's wireless internet? The amount of work that goes into actually making it simple is really challenging. And so, you know, we have, as most of the hotel companies, we've got full-time teams working on how to make it easier to do that, and how do we actually make it more efficient, and how do we make it so it's not intrusive? That's the trick for luxury. Is it how does it happen without people knowing it's happened? You know, how does it look automatic? How do you just turn the TV? One of the interesting things about, you know, TV sets, which we've been playing with for the last 12 months, is a real simple thing. As an example, is that when you turn the TV off, one of the things we've been trying to make sure we focus on is when you turn TV back on, it goes back on exactly the same channel and the same volume in the same place. And that's a little thing that we think is really important. It doesn't go back to a default setting, and you have to go back through, you know, radio or TV, bang, 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 bang. It actually goes back, it remembers where you were and goes back exactly where you were. And that's what I mean by the little things, you know, and that takes a huge amount of work for that technology to do that little bit of thing. And that's the detail that I think in luxury that's really important.
It's interesting. Like I just came back from leave, and it was exactly that. You turn the TV off and back on. You've got to go through 50 channels to find Disney Junior again, which was really annoying. Okay, so
you like Disney Junior?
I love Disney Junior.
Okay.
So now that you're back in Sydney, I guess what's been your biggest achievement? What are you going to hang your hat on in terms of this has been my impact at Shangri-La so far?
Still too early, I think, for me. Certainly, we and I say we as in the team, we've got behind a really important agenda, and that is to offer the best personalised guest experience in Sydney. And we think we're well on track to do that. We have the resource. We're completely internalised. So, and what I mean by that is we can do everything in-house. So we have our own laundry, our own valet services, our own pastry kitchens, banquet kitchens. We're completely internalised hotel, so we don't require any outside support to operate. So we think with that and the right team, we can feel that we can offer a superior, in fact, an incomparable guest experience, and that's our aim. But that is actually not an easy task. That is actually an incredibly challenging task because of the luxury guest, because of the type of requests that come. You don't know where it's going to come from next, and so it's learning how to sort of anticipate the resources that are going to be required and be ready for that.
So you said a really important word that I want to touch on. How did you go about building your executive team or your team around you, and how important is that in a leadership role?
Yeah, I think when you get into a leadership role, the first thing you need to do, step one, is you've got to have the right team. So I've only just really, as I said, my resume only started a couple of weeks ago. But that has been the hardest part for me for the last 12 months, is getting the right team in place, the right team, not just in ability, but also in capability of working together and synchronising with each other and being compatible. Getting that team right is actually the hardest part, and so that's taken a year nearly, but I'm pretty comfortable now that that's the right team that's going to take us forward, and then now we can start to sort of really drive initiatives a lot harder. Step one, team. Step two, actions. And you can't do it any other way around. If you do actions first, it's always going to be compromised.
How challenging is it for you to have those difficult conversations with your managers? Either for underperforming or for kind of not the right fit.
Yeah, I think it's hard if you're not used to it.
Yep.
I think if you're an avoider of conversation that's challenging, you'll tend to always avoid it. It's like anything, I guess. If you dive in and get used to it, it becomes normal. It becomes the normal. And so I'm generally, I guess my team would say I'm fairly consistent. I don't really have a lot of emotional up and downs, but I'm fairly direct. So I'll say things as it is. If it's good, it's great. If it's not good, I'll just say it's not good. And then people learn pretty quickly, where they stand. And I think that's the most important part, because then they can make decisions. And some flourish with that, some don't. And that's the decision that they have to make.
How do you attract good talent? How do you encourage people to kind of jump into this industry?
You've got to understand how they think. I think you've got to understand how talent, particularly high potential talent, think differently. They definitely think differently. And if you put them into a standard job in a standard location, they will get frustrated within a couple of months, and they will move on. I think the important thing is be able to identify talent, and then have the capability and the capacity to use it. Otherwise, don't recruit it, is my advice. You've just you've got to have the opportunity there for them to be able to get the teeth into it. We know, and you can read the statistics. It's not about money. It's not about title, that sort of stuff. They're looking for something. They're looking for a goal. They're looking for something that they can, as you say, hang your hat on. So if you can provide them that, then absolutely, then they'll be on board.
We've got a room of leadership students with us here and on the stream. I guess the big takeout for them, and there's a couple of pieces to this question, is the first one is, what advice do you give to aspiring leaders? What do they need to have to kind of make it and survive in this industry?
Well, one is passion.
Yep.
You've got to have drive, and you've got to know where you want to go. And I think personal leadership is absolutely paramount. You've got to have personal leadership. In other words, you've got to know where you are in life. You've got to be happy with yourself, both in the balance wheel of things, spiritually, financial, relationships, work, all that sort of stuff. You've got to be balanced. You've got to know exactly who you are as a person and where you want to go. And I think that's the really that drives the passion, which then obviously is going to send you where you want to go. And then obviously the second part of that is then once you can lead yourself, then you've got a fair chance of leading others, and then it's how you apply that leadership model to others.
And the second part to that question is, what's been a mistake that you've made in your journey that these guys can almost learn from? So don't do that.
Probably, I guess this is a common one, but don't anticipate or don't. What's the saying? Don't guess what other people are thinking or sort of
never assume.
That's what there's that saying, isn't there? I won't say another bit.
No.
But it is like that. Don't guess anything or estimate anything. Always ask the question. Always listen to what people are saying. Because I think going back to my UK scenario where I went in there just thinking everything was all right. I didn't ask the question. That's what I didn't do.
Yep.
And I think if that can apply to so many different environments, and I think even coming into Sydney as a general manager, the first thing I did is ask lots of questions. Understand, because that's you can be going off on a tangent thinking you're doing a great job, and not until it's too late do you realise you're doing the wrong thing.
Fantastic. I hope you guys were listening to that. Let's talk a little bit about Shangri-La as a property. When I first took my industry placement class here, everyone sounded like they all wanted to work for Shangri-La. Yep. I guess from my point of view, I remember years ago there was this amazing Shangri-La ad with the hiker in the snow. Yeah. You've probably seen it, and the wolves look like they're about to pounce on him, and then he wakes up, and then they're all keeping him warm and keeping him alive. And I guess that sets that Shangri-La standard of hospitality from a caring family. Yep. As a GM, how do you make sure that level of service and that standard is maintained in your property?
Quite easy, really. It starts with me. So it starts with me showing that hospitality from the heart, as we call it, and the way you behave towards your team is the way that they're going to behave towards the guest. So certainly being a caring organisation, which Shangri-La very much is, and that comes from being a family. It is, even though it's quite a large company, it is a family company. Yep. And they do care. I mean, for instance, one of the things that Mr. Kwok, who's the founder of the company, says that we must provide 3 hot meals a day for every hotel in the world. That's it. And that is a non-negotiable. Yeah. You can't cut it out. You can't do anything with it. You have to provide 3 hot meals a day for every staff member everywhere in the world. And because that's about caring for our staff, and about that's where it starts. It starts from the heart of our business. And I think so. To answer your question, it starts with me, and then permeates down to our team, and then we start to send that message out to our guests.
Your corporate website talks about Asian standards of hospitality service. How does that translate to in various contexts around the world? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I've just been in Shanghai last week talking about exactly that. Yeah. About what is an Asian experience and why does it translate. I think there is a perception around the Asian experience being very caring, very warm, and certainly to a degree there is some association with certain foods and dress, and so we sort of transpose that into our hotel. So for an example, we have congee, for instance, on our buffet 24 hours on all our outlets 24 hours because that's a comfort food for Asian people. But then we transpose that into also other cultures, and so understand that that comfort food is important. So we always understand what each comfort food is for the source markets that we have in the hotel. So as an example, and then obviously the caring, that hospitality from the heart, the welcome is very important, because that's a very much an Asian culture of welcoming into the hotel. So we try and set a goal that we always have someone that welcomes someone in the door. We try not to let any guest get past without being welcomed into the hotel. And following on for that, we try to actually welcome them in their home language as a very important part of the customer experience. So we've set a benchmark for Cantonese and Mandarin, which we definitely have someone every shift. But for other languages, we're sort of not quite there yet, but we are trying to do our best.
Amazing. And look, I mean, the more you talk, the more I'm hearing that alignment between your first job in the Navy and making people feel comfortable and looking after them, and then what you're doing at Shangri-La. There really isn't, not
a lot of difference
principle.
At all.
There's not much difference. A few more questions before we wrap up. I guess from a customer perspective,
yes.
How important are your loyalty programs and making sure your customers are really aligned with your brand and they're not going to IHG or they're not going to a call?
Yeah. Guest loyalty is absolutely a priority for any brand.
Yeah.
That's why you have a brand. For those of you outside, you buy Nike shoes. You buy Nike shoes because you like Nike. We have to find people in the market that like what Shangri-La offer, and then we have to ensure that we treat them with an absolute glove and priority, because obviously they've indicated that they like us, and so we need to indicate back that we like them, and that's what a loyalty program does. For them coming to stay with us, we give them something back in return, and I think that's really important in establishing the relationship. And then we use them for guest feedback to help align our brand to their needs going forward. So absolutely, I mean, and the idea is the higher the retention rate, the better your business is going to be. Fantastic.
We got a couple of questions come in from the stream as well.
Okay.
Airbnb. How critical is what Airbnb are doing? Is that really impacting your business?
In short, the answer is yes. Of course, it impacts because it gives someone another option. And that's the challenge. And in a free market, what you've got to understand is what is your competitive advantage. And for a hotel, particularly a luxury hotel, our competitive advantage is that the only place where you can eat, meet, and sleep, really.
Yeah.
You can go and get Airbnb, but there's no one going to cook for you.
Yep.
No one can do your washing for you, sort of stuff.
Yep.
So I think hotels are really concerned about it, and really concerned about the deregulation side of it. And I think obviously you've read lots of information about that. And I guess from a hotelier, our industry bodies are looking for equality and regulation. But other than that, we need to understand what our competitive advantage is. And so that's what we're focused on. We're focusing on looking after our guests and retaining those guests that want to stay with us.
Amazing. A question here from Val in Youre. The question is, besides breakfast and or banquets, how can brand hotels compete with standalone restaurants?
I think we should compete. We have great food and beverage talent, in hotels, and we should. And if you go into Asia, in Shangri-La in Asia, a lot of our restaurants are 2 and 3 Michelin star, so there's no doubt we do compete. In Australia, it's a little bit different because we don't have a Michelin star rating, and we have a HAT rating here, and that's mostly been given to sort of more bespoke standalone properties. But our restaurant in Shangri-La did have a chef's hat, and we're searching for another one currently. So I believe we should be offering best of product in the marketplace in food and beverage. It's just sometimes we probably traditionally lack the creativity of the standalones, but we need to be more competitive.
You've got an amazing pastry chef though at Shangri-La who's constantly on Instagram.
Yes, yeah. So Anna's been great for us.
Yeah.
Anna Polyview started out doing some work with MasterChef a couple of years ago now, and now she's become a bit of a sensation for herself, but also for a hotel. But that's a good example of really trying to move things left field. Traditionally, probably in a hotel like Shangri-La, we wouldn't have really sort of been able to grasp that concept and been able to run with it. But certainly, if you go down to the lobby now, you'll see firecrackers all over the place, and it creates a unique experience which our guests are enjoying. So that's a really good example of actually really standing out in food and beverage in a good way.
You guys are also involved in Vivid this year,
Yes.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of the pictures you're putting on as well.
They're
They're phenomenal.
Yep.
Another question from Scott Richards' class in Youre is, what advice would you give a first-time manager or department head who's managing staff? I think you touched on that previously.
I did a little bit, but I think that, yeah, absolutely. Get to know your team. You know, really learn from your team, I think is really the starting point. But learn with your team with a picture in the back of your mind of where you're going. You know, part of being a leader is knowing where you're going. So know where you're going, and then listen to your team, and then between those two things, you'll find an equilibrium there somewhere.
Fantastic. Question here from student Jackson. Did you rely more on interpersonal skills or technical skills to get to where you are now?
Both.
Both?
Definitely both. You've got to be strong in technical as well as people skills, because it is becoming a more technical business, whether it's financial, whether it's understanding reports, doing MPVs on new developments and acquisitions or expansion. So you've got to be able to talk to fund managers on your business. You've got to be able to talk to frontline colleagues about how their day is going. You've got to know a lot: engineering, food and beverage, rooms, IT. Unfortunately,
everyone's got to be there.
You've got to know a lot. Yeah,
great. Next question from Julian Losha. How important are group projects in developing a strong team? Do you get people working together? Or
absolutely. I think group projects, it's a really good question actually, and quite well positioned, because with me, all the projects in the hotel are group based.
Yep.
So basically what I do is I try not to make any decisions. That's one of my goals, is not to make any decisions. Let the teams make the decisions. So ideas come in, and then when an idea comes in, then I let people who are interested in that form a group around that, and then update us, you know, as the project goes. I'm quite comfortable letting people go off on their own direction and seeing where it ends up. I think it's quite exciting, really.
Yeah.
But the only way you can find the right people for those teams is to let people find it themselves.
And get everyone involved, really.
Yeah. So literally, in my hotel at the moment, probably a third of the hotel are involved with different projects.
That's on top of their everyday business as usual.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And do you find that that's almost motivating and engaging them in the business?
Yeah, it's because it's a passion for them. So if it's something they're interested in and they want to be a part of, they'll do it. And that's quite opposite. Sometimes you'll find a group and the GM will go, right, pick that person, and put them in the group. And of course, they don't want to be there. Well, then it all falls apart.
Yep.
What I find is if you let the group form itself, then it's got the right people in it, and then it will last, and it will get results.
Brilliant. A question here from Youre. You talked about the difference in culture from the UK to Australia.
Yep.
How did you adjust to the difference, and what advice would you give to others that find themselves in the same position?
Yeah, I think any time you go into a new environment, new hotel, new culture, it's really important to get feedback quickly. Get feedback on how you're going. I constantly in the first week ask my management team, how am I doing? How am I being perceived? What people are thinking about me? Yep. How are my messages coming across? I think that's the first thing, is really make sure that you solicit a lot of feedback. Do a 360 at the 3-month mark. Do a 360 at the 9-month mark.
Yep.
And really get an understanding. It's hard sometimes. You don't want to hear it, but certainly getting into a new culture and environment, really important to get feedback. And build relationships, particularly with your direct reports, and be able to get honesty from them as soon as possible.
Fantastic. These questions keep coming in. Someone give me the wind up if we're running out of time. But I think this is a really important question from Val in Youre. As a manager, how much time do you spend daily or weekly walking around the property, and the importance of managing by walking around?
Yeah, I think if you put it into time, I alluded that to before. But I would probably, in time-wise, I'd probably spend about, I would say, on average, about a third of my day on the floor.
Wow.
Either talking to guests or talking to colleagues in the hotel. But yeah, a lot of time. I think it's really important. You've got to be on the floor. And I think that as a general manager, that's how you know what goes on. Whether it's meeting guests, or down the laundry, understanding the issues that exist in the hotel is really important.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Yep, we've got one here. There's a microphone coming.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hooley. My name is Nicholas. I would like to ask you one question about leadership.
Sure.
So you said that one of the very challenging role in leadership is you got to get a right team.
Yeah.
So my question is, during your past, did you ever face a team which is not right? And what have you done to get the team to be on the right track? Is it difficult? What would be your advice for that?
Tough question, Nicholas. Tough question. Yeah, I did. I won't, obviously, you don't want to say too much when or how, but there was a period of time where I did join a group of hotels. You worked that out, where the team was not the right team at all. It was not the right team to take it forward, and I knew that literally from day one. I wasn't going to be able to achieve my goals. So what was really challenging is how it was having those tough conversations, particularly when you're new, particularly when you don't have a lot of credibility. That was what was really hard for me. But for me, I knew I had to do it. So I had those tough conversations and sort of provided opportunities for them to sort of to move on, and then enabled me to recruit my team. But was it hard? Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard. Because a lot of the things you don't know as a leader is whether you're doing the right thing or not. You often question whether you're doing the right thing, particularly if you're going on a new direction or a new strategy. It's quite easy for someone to come and fizzle your story and go, it's not going to work, or, you're doing the wrong thing, or why did you get rid of that person for? And you've got to maintain confidence as a leader to say, you know what, I made that decision because I know it's the right decision. So it's tough. It's really tough. It pushes you to the edge of your own ability. You say, can I do it? Can I do it? But you just got to have faith in yourself.
That's a really fantastic segue, and I think there's a question here, and while we get the microphone out there, instinct.
Sorry,
I mean, how
I don't catch up. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm a little bit slow. So did you reform a new team, or did you just let it go with the same old?
No. You can't. One thing one of my first CEOs told me is that the situation will never change. If it's not right today, it won't be right tomorrow. You've got to act. So yeah, absolutely, change the team. Yeah, absolutely.
How important is instinct? And this is a question from Facebook, from Ricardo. Okay. How important is instinct as a GM, and how many times do you make decisions on instinct?
I think instinct is an outcome of many years' experience, isn't it? So I think the more experienced you are, the better career that you've had as far as breadth of knowledge and built and experience built. I think the better your instinct becomes, and then you become more confident in it. I think absolutely. As far if you call that the sort of intuition piece that you have, I think you rely on it quite a lot. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you don't know the answer.
Do people challenge you more often when you're making a gut decision versus making a decision based on data?
I think as a general manager, probably not directly. Mm-hmm. I think most of your justification will come from above. Come from fund managers, owners, bosses who may be question a decision if it's not in line with company policy or company direction. But I think, as I said, kind of instinct is a basis of experience. So usually you've got some sort of basis for your decision. Yep. And I think that's always important. Because one of the things is you can't make rash decisions, because then your team don't know how to support it. So you've got to, and that's why I say before, sometimes I try not to make decisions. I try to make decisions float to the surface themselves. So the argument actually develops itself, and then people go, oh yeah, that is the answer. Because, so usually, for me, the only time I make really decisive decisions is usually in emergencies. Around usually situations, fires, floods, those sort of things. Yep. Then I usually will make more directive decisions.
Any other questions from the audience? Yep, we've got a question up the front.
So just to take a bit of a lighter spin on it, I'm
Sure.
just interested, what do you do as a businessman, essentially? What do you do with your free time outside work? Do you normally invest that into learning for the hotel industry? Do you read a book a week sort of thing, or do you play golf to unwind? What do you do on your weekends? What do you do on your weekends to help yourself?
I love toys. I read the Financial Review cover to cover every day. I do a lot of reading, online reading, a lot of in the commercial world. So I do that. That's part of my daily routine. I have a BMW motorbike, which I ride quite a lot, which I love. I have a 43-foot Riviera sports cruiser, which I take out quite a lot. And if you call eating out, you're doing a bit of analysis for the business, then it's probably work related, but I do like eating out as well. So I do like eating out on the boat as well, which is like a double winner really. So
just
yeah,
rub it in. Just rub it in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those two, can I come?
Yeah, well, I do. I offer it to the team when they do great things. I say, you do a great thing in the hotel, you can come out on the boat. So I'm taking the team out on Tuesday night for Vivid. We're going to go out and check the last of the lights out via the water on Tuesday night. But I think that's that balance. You've got to have fun, and it's a bit of everything. So absolutely, fun's important. Yeah,
I think we forget a lot of the times that hospitality is a really, really fun industry to be in.
It's, absolutely, it is.
People are there to enjoy themselves. It's a leisure activity. So we've got to be able to have some fun as well when you're in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions from? We got another question just over here.
Mr. Hooley, how can you describe your leadership style and how did it change throughout the time?
I would classify my leadership style as consensual, I guess, and the fact is that I really set the pathway of where we want to go, and then I'll drop that out there, and then I'll really sort of then use most of my time to support my team. I was brought up on from the defence days, I was brought up on the situational leadership model. Anyone familiar with that, SL2? So it was really about changing how you come across depending on the situation. So come back before, generally on day by day, usually I take the team offside every 6 months. I set a vision about how I'd like to get there, and then we spend a day working about how we would do that. And then basically from there, I don't make any decisions after that. Usually I let my team do it. So my job is a support measure to actually guide them through getting to the achievement. The only time that my situational leadership really changes in direction is, as I said, in emergencies. Usually high security issues, floods, fires, then usually I find I've got to jump in and be decisive and make quick decisions and let people know what's going on. So so I think it is adaptable, but these days I find is that people are very intelligent. You're all very intelligent people. You're all probably actually 10 times more intelligent than me. Statistically you are. You're actually 8 points more intelligent than I am on paper. But if you believe on what they say. So it's not about leadership these days is not about saying things. It's about creating an environment that allows people to produce.
So we can conclude that it's better to be flexible these days.
No, that's a good point. Don't be flexible. You've got to be really rigid on your goals. You've got to know. You've got to be absolutely rigorous on where you're heading for. And I came back to my team today actually and said, I said to them today, we need to make some changes to our cost structure for the rest of the year. And I said, because we're not on plan anymore, we're off plan. And they go, you're right, boss, we are. We should have realised that ourselves. You've got to be rigorous to your goals. It's like a sprinter trying to win a 100-metre race. They're going to be absolutely dogged to get to the end of that. That's the whole goal. They train every morning for that one thing. And I think from leadership point of view, the worst thing you can possibly do as a leader is not stay absolutely determined on where you want to go.
Thank you, Mr. Hooley.
It's great advice. Another question.
Hi, Mr. Hooley. My question is, I see that you have changed many different roles during your career path.
Yes.
For example, you used to be a GM at Milvac.
Yes.
And then you move on to HR.
Yes.
In IHG, and then in operation in IHG, and then back to GM in Shangri-La. So my question is, how did you prepare yourself for those changes? And for example, how do you prove to your team that you are the right leader, especially when you take the new role?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's two things. One is you have to prove to get those roles. You have to prove credibility to get them. Most at that sort of seniority level, there's lots of people with fantastic experience that will apply for those jobs. And so your experience and also the way you articulate what you've done and how you've achieved it sets your credibility level up. So to get the job, there's no other way you can do it. You've just got to be able to display credibility. To your team, that's a different story. Yeah, absolutely. So it's important that you do sort of let people know that you understand the business and you understand them, and you do that by listening to them. I think people build rapport like you do. When you meet people, you start to talk to people, and you go, oh, this person's full of whatever it is. This person's a good person. You know people straight away, you know, and that's no different to anything in the world. As a general manager or a leader coming into a business, you've got to build a rapport, and if you build that rapport the right way, then they will trust you, and that's what leadership is about, is developing trust. Yeah.
Brilliant question. Any other questions from the audience? Yep. We'll go here, or we'll go to the back first. Ladies first, go for it.
Hi, my name is Sheena. So my question is, as a leader, and since you've traveled a lot, have you noticed distinct cultural differences in the workplace? And has that influenced your management or your leadership in different hotels? Like, say, compare Asia or Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, China and Australia is a really good example. The leadership style in China is very, very different to Australia. Australia's people want to get on and do their things themselves. You know, in China, they're very much, they want to please. They want to please their boss. It's just a natural cultural thing. They want to be recognised for doing that. And so, yeah, coming back to the original point, you have to be adaptive in your leadership style, because there's no use, as I went to the UK, there's no use applying an Australian leadership style in a second-tier city in China, because it's not going to work the same way. So I think part about leadership has been adaptive to the situation and adaptive to the people that are around you. Does that answer it? Thank you.
Question down the front.
Righty, so I actually went to the Industry Trading Solutions Summit at the Four Seasons actually with Sheena on Wednesday. And one of the things that came up, well, the main thing of that was that within the next 3 years, just in Australia alone, we'll need about another 80,000 plus staff for hospitality, not just in hotels, in restaurants, cafes, small businesses, etc., etc. I guess one thing I want to ask is, how can we, as students, progress up the ladder quick enough? For me personally, I think me and all my friends, we want to get to that managerial position tomorrow if we could. What? No, it's true. If I could,
He's not a millennial, I promise.
So how can we, as graduating students, climb up the managerial ladder as quick as we can? Is it just through experience, purely, or?
One of the toughest statements that you need to digest is, you don't know what you don't know. That's the hardest thing, okay? So you think actually running a hotel can't be really that hard. It's just about feeding people, keeping them happy. Bob's your uncle. And I think that's the challenge. And I'm the same as you. I want to be there. I want to be that position tomorrow. And I think the challenge is understanding that you don't know what you don't know, and you need to gain experience. So you've got to just accept that's the fact. So if you go back, if I can use the analogy of an athlete, you know, or even some actresses or actors you see in your career, you see them when they win their gold medal, or you've seen a movie star, you know, make a front line of a movie and win a Logie. What you don't see is the 20 years previous to that they were, you know, living out of an empty room, working 14 hours a day, or training, you know, 10 hours a day to actually get to that level. That's what you don't realise. You don't remember any of that. Well, no one sees any of that. Someone told me the other day that Madonna didn't actually produce her first song that was a winner until she was 27 or something. You know, and so I think there is a lot of time that needs to take place, and I think that my advice to you is you've got to get out there, and you just got to be passionate and get stuck into the industry. It is the fastest. I think statistically, it's still the fastest industry globally for career advancement. There's without a doubt. You could be my youngest GM in the UK was 26 years old.
Wow, that's young.
Yeah.
That's young.
So that's the beauty of the industry. The beauty of the industry is there's opportunity there. Okay. What you've got to do is, one, you've got to be passionate. Two, you've got to understand that it takes hard work to get there. So taking any shortcut is going to be a shortcut in your career. The more you learn early in your life, the less you have to learn later. It doesn't correlate out. You still have to know it at some point in time. I can still make a coffee, I think. So there is no physical shortcut. But if you're passionate about it, you're driven, you take opportunities as they come, and you're prepared and open and listen. I can guarantee you that once you get through the first 10 years in hospitality is the hardest. The first 10 years is no doubt the hardest, because you've got to be look, my daughter's just starting out, so she's in her first year. She's at the Hilton in banquets. Okay, so I think she starts around. I don't see her. She starts around 3 in the afternoon, comes home at 3 in the morning, and that's where she starts out. And of course, you do that for a couple of years, then you get a full-time job, then you become a supervisor or a shift supervisor, then you move into front office, and that first 10 years is all about knowledge and hard work. And then all of a sudden you'll find a couple of things will start happening. People will start to remember who you are, and all of a sudden you'll get offered that first front office manager position or that first director of food and beverage position. And then from there, it becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot easier. But a lot of people, unfortunately, tend to I guess get distracted by that first 10 years. And they sort of want it to go away, and it doesn't go away. But the rewards are great. The salaries in hospitality are huge once you get above a GM level. It's a very good lifestyle. So it's just stick that in the back of your mind. Boat, man, I like your mind. It's a great lifestyle, but it doesn't come. It only comes to those that have got the guts and the gumption to push through and get there.
So one of the questions we've got from Dr. Go in Youre, this is an interesting question. What are your thoughts on automation and robotics impacting the hospitality workforce?
I think we need more.
Yep,
definitely more robotics. I think. Has anyone seen the concierge in New York at the? Where is that? Yotel, isn't it? Yotel? Yotel, that's it. Yotel. Anyone seen that? Obviously you have. Absolutely. I think the concierge at the Yotel New York is an absolute classic example of where we can use robotics. Laundries, we can use robotics. There's many places that we can use robotics. I think we should be putting people where people can make a difference.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Question. We've got a microphone. Here we go.
With over 600 staff just in that property alone, how do you show them at the end of the year how much that you've appreciated their work? Like the end of term parties must be huge.
Just
and
a
how
cuddle.
Just
a cuddle. Just a cuddle. How much more do you need? No, we do like most hotels do. We certainly have a lot of recognition in place. To give you an example, our front office team today, just for last month, hit a 100,000 upsell target for the month, and so this afternoon there's cakes, pizzas, and all sorts of stuff. I think recognition, to your point, is really important. And then every February we do have we have a hotel ball where they can bring their partners along, and we have a big night of band and that sort of stuff, and we celebrate. But to your point, recognition I think needs to happen ongoing.
Brilliant. Down the front.
In your leadership, have there been any instances where your team members lose confidence in you, and how do you really recover from that? What did you do?
I think there was a time. I think when I was telling you, when I first went to the UK before, I think a lot of my general managers probably lost trust in me. And it was really hard. Really hard. Probably one of the hardest parts of my career, because I really didn't understand that. To come back to that cultural difference and a different environment, I didn't understand that, I had to work really hard to swallow my pride, swallow everything I knew, and actually find out exactly what the problem was. And plus, I got myself a coach, and then together we just worked through it over a period of about a year to re-strengthen, first of all, my confidence, and then also to better understand my team, and then be able to lead them more effectively. So. I think that was probably one of the greatest achievements in my career, actually, as well. It was the hardest part, but then when I got through the other side and we achieved the results we did, it was also the most exciting part of my career, probably.
Thank you.
How important is the coach?
Certain times, very important.
Yep.
I think certain times, a lot of the times when you're in leadership roles, you don't know where you're going or what you're doing. So you got a business plan, or you're taking a new hotel, a new brand, you don't know where you're going. Sometimes you can lose confidence in yourself, and you can lose confidence in your ability. you can talk to friends about it or have a beer about it or talk to your partner about it, but sometimes they can't be as brutal as you need someone to be. And a coach is everything. A coach can be brutal, honest, comforting. They can be a bit of everything. And certainly, I think ongoing, I don't really need one, but certainly, there's times when they're certainly incredibly valuable.
Just a sounding board, really.
Yeah, just someone who you can be open to and they can be open to you. And I think sometimes that reality helps a lot.
So what's next for Craig? Where are you off to next? What's your next challenge?
I've got a number of challenges actually.
Yep.
Going forward, but I think they're mixture of both growing my hotelier career even further and being a better hotelier. I like running a hotel. I've been involved in running numbers of hotels, but I enjoy running a hotel. I enjoy being part of that. And then I guess bringing all that experience together, I've got a few little things on, few little projects on the side that are exciting me at the moment as well. So I think it's an interesting time for me at the moment, and more to come.
Well, look, it's been amazing this afternoon. Look, we'll probably ask a few questions afterwards, but it's been absolutely phenomenal to pick your brain and share this. Thank you to all of those on the live stream. And over in Youure and our other campuses who have been sending in the questions. It's been fantastic. Thank you to the audience that we've got here for your amazing questions. And Craig, thank you for your time this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Youve.